and welcome to another episode of the Wizard's Respite Sanctorum, show where we dive into all things TTRPG and, nerdiness, nerd culture. We're going to be expanding a little bit today and stepping out of strictly RPG, but don't worry, we still got plenty of game news, game information, game RPG gaming, everything on today's episode. But before we jump into that, I am, as always, joined with my co-host Zachariah from Old Man Gaming, and he has some exciting news for us from our last episode. Zach, what do we got?
Hi everybody, Zachariah from Old Man Gaming, and thank you, Wizard, for that wonderful introduction as usual. We got some comments. We have said that if you guys comment, we'll try and read them out, try and talk about them on the air. Our last, we did miss, this is technically a week late, this podcast, because we do it bi-weekly and we didn't get it last week, but we're back. Sometimes that happens. Life gets in the way. But our last actual episode was Actual Play Podcast. We talked about our favorite TTRPG Actual Play podcasts. And we got a comment which was really special, especially to me, without a doubt. I'm sure to Wiz too. But it's from Crispy Chubs. Hi guys, Christian from Roll and Tell here. Jeffrey sent me this video, and we're both stoked to hear your appreciation of the show. Thank you so much for discussing us on your show. We're beyond honored. We hope you continue to listen, especially since our finale is being released in 2 days for this story. Also, can't thank you enough for informing me about Two Monsters Rolling Dice. I'm stoked to give them a listen now. They sound so fun. Big appreciation to you both again. Thank you for your amazing work. I just want to say right off the bat, Roll and Tell, this is the honor is not us. We have 442. Well, Old Man Gaming has 442 subscribers on YouTube. We are humble people here. I personally am honored that, as far as I'm concerned, Actual Play royalty graced our presence, our comment list with the presence. I don't know if they're gonna listen to this episode, but if they do, I really appreciate it. Christian and Jeffrey, you guys are amazing to listen to. You guys fundamentally understand role-playing in a way that I really appreciate. And I do want to say right now, since I got this, I don't get a lot of time to listen to podcasts. I just don't. So, I work through them very slowly. Plus, with just the way my brain works, I can, listen to, 2, and then I got to switch to something else for a while. So I'm very behind with you guys. But since you commented in this, I've been furiously trying to catch up because I feel bad that he commented and I'm that far behind.
I'm behind too, but I think that's kind of honestly one of the magical things with podcasts and stuff like that, You don't have to binge it. You can take it at your own time. I was listening to them this morning while I was washing the dishes and stuff like that because, day-to-day monotony will drive you insane unless you got something fun going on, and they're a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But you don't always get the opportunity to multitask like that. So you just make it work when you can make it work and just make your life a little bit better as you go. And that show does. That show made my life a little bit better this morning.
Great. It's so nice to get a comment from one of the people we talked about. I was kind of honored a little bit on that. It's one thing to get a response on Twitter /X/ whatever it's called right now. It's one thing because it's easy. You know what I mean? I get responses from almost all of those, the people that I comment on there. But for you guys to take your time to actually go onto YouTube and comment, just kind of, it made my day. It really did.
Yeah, that was when Zach shot that over to me and said, "Hey, we got these." They commented. Yeah. I think I was out in public, and I just was beaming ear to ear. The rest of just walking, doing my day. Everybody must have just looked at me like, "Who is this maniac with this giant ass grin on his face?"
Yeah,
I was just over the moon, man.
It was magical. It was truly magical. I've got to catch up now. I'm mission point catch up on this podcast until I'm all the way there. But yeah, that was our big comment. I responded in text, and then we wanted to respond here as well. But thank you so much for the comment and taking the time out of
Yeah.
your day to actually respond.
Thank you,
I
guys.
appreciate it.
Okay, so should we jump into our topic for the day?
Sure.
All right, so we're going to be exploring a couple of different facets of the gaming industry, specifically where it's headed and what it means for the future of our favorite hobbies. We are seeing some pretty big tidal waves and news coming down from Wizards of the Coast, from Hasbro, regarding layoffs, decisions that are being made, products that were supposed to be delivered last month are getting delivered maybe next year.
Ooh.
Um and I wanted to talk about that. We also, Zach, you got some insight into another side of our nerddom, of our various nerddoms, right?
Yeah, my video game depression is now invading this show. Uh, yeah, it was interesting when you wanted to do this talking point because this is one of the ones that Wizard, usually when we're brainstorming talking points, we'll just send over ideas. And this was like Wizard's first idea was the thing about layoffs in D&D. Right now, the AAA gaming market, like video gaming market, is kind of collapsing on itself. And by AAA, I mean the big games, not the indie games, the big games. The big games,
Big boys.
Yeah, like the big sports games, the big, your Destinies, your big games. Yeah, there's a huge mismanagement of the industry because there is no checks and balances. It's kind of the Wild West, and it's ridiculous how badly they manage their companies. Sony has just laid off 8% of their global workforce. Embracer had to shutter, I think, like 6 or 7 companies, and I just told Wiz, and I said it on our podcast, the gaming podcast I do with Neil. This is the sentence that makes it the most insane. Embracer had to sell off those companies after last year buying 9 companies, including Gearbox, one of the larger AAA publishers, because a deal with a Saudi Arabian prince fell through on them. So they bought 9 companies last year, then has to close them this year because a Saudi Arabian prince didn't want to purchase stock in them anymore. This is the kind of stuff that we're seeing in video game industries, just terrible business decisions, and it leads to these layoffs, mass firings, and you're going to see the quality in video games kind of drop when it comes to AAA. Double A and single A aren't doing that bad, but AAA is like really just struggling.
Yeah, which is you're got your finger on the pulse when it comes to video games. I've been tracking the Wizards of the Coast situation for the last, I guess, over a year and a half now, since really their scandals started unrolling all the way back with the launch of their Spelljammer release, and it just kept getting worse and worse and worse, and it got to the point where I was just, and many of us, hardcore fans of the industry, scratching our heads. What the hell is going on with this company? Turns out, and I actually did an article about this when the news dropped, but most of the heads of Wizards of the Coast right now are actually coming out of Microsoft. They're the CEO and the president both worked at Microsoft in the past, in the video games sort of area. I think like the vice president of Dungeons and Dragons specifically also
crazy.
Working in video games. And so the shockwave, it seems like whatever bad juju was happening over to the video games, these group of people kind of brought it over to RPGs.
Well, and it's crazy because you look at the last 2 years, and I'm going to say this right now, I do not have the current events acumen on TTRPGs that you do. I love TTRPGs, but I don't follow the industry like I follow video gaming. And that's mainly because this channel the YouTube part of this channel, if you're watching this on YouTube, started as a video game channel. It started as me playing video games, and then I got some friends into it, and then I decided to do more videos than I ever have time to do. But that's what it started as, and it's slowly kind of evolved into this, like, well, we do some video games, and we do some pop culture, and we do TTRPGs, and we do all sorts of stuff, and which makes our lives harder because the algorithm has no idea what to do with us. But that being said, I like you and I's friendship started within the last like 2 or 3 years, and that has allowed me to kind of glom onto your like following of it because I got into Wizard's Respite. I read some of your articles, and you just look at the mismanagement is kind of like it's not the same types of mistakes that are being made, right?
Right.
But I think D&D is hugely suffering from being bought by Hasbro, a company that does not understand the property that it owns or how to market it. I think it is also, it has suffered from huge public relations problems.
Oh, yeah.
There was something we were talking about on the gaming podcast that kind of made it in as a bonus. And one of the things is in video games, there is this there's this type of game called a game as service, a games as service, live as service games. That's kind of what they're called. The idea being is that you buy it or you get it for free or whatever, and then you continue to play it, they continue to update it ad infinitum. Their goal is to have that be the main game you play always. Good examples of this game: Call of Duty Warzone Battle Royale. You've got the Fortnite that's been around for like 10 years, stuff like that. That's just these online games that are perpetual. Destiny is another games of service. Actually, a lot of people could argue that it's one of the first games of service. The problem with this, though, and trust me, I'm getting somewhere. The problem with this is a lot of the companies now, they want this payout. They want this infinite payout from the games of service. But the problem is they put something out there, people don't like it, or it's not good, or it's busted. Instead of staying with it and fixing it, they dump it and try to move to the next one. And with games of service as a relationship to people is not the same as a product. When you're buying a narrative one-off game, like, say, Baldur's Gate, you are paying $70, you're getting the game, and then in a lot of ways, I mean, nowadays every game has updates and DLC. Baldur's Gate is no different. But overall, your transaction is complete. Whereas with these games as service, it is not about that one-time purchase. It is about trust and establishing trust with your consumers. This is where I make the correlation with D&D, because D&D, in my opinion, or any good TTRPG, is a live service game. That's what it is, because you're not really making money off the system, because anybody can take a system and put it into their thing, and you can't really do anything to them. You can't really copyright a series of numbers on dice. You can copyright some things about it, but overall you really can't copyright a system. So
branding's pretty much it.
Exactly. It's branding. You're trying to establish a relationship so that when a TTRPG player, goes to the bookstore to pick up a new module, to pick up a new set of rules, to play a game, they're spending the money on your game. They're choosing to spend the money on their game, even though they could probably go on the internet and get a PDF of it, a real easy pirate, and print it off on a printer and be fine. You know, the thing is, though, is I would honestly even say that TTRPGs are more games of service than your most games of service video game, because there is no games of service player out there who is only ever going to play that one game for the rest of their life ever. Whereas there are D&D players who will never pick up another TTRPG, who will never even consider picking up another TTRPG. That is their baby, and that is what they come to town with, you know?
I do, and it's tricky. I see exactly what you're saying. It's almost like D&D has created almost like a template for a game of service in a way system, because you have this core rule book everybody buys, and then you have to continue to make money off this, saying they've already purchased it. So what do? You turn out new
Yeah.
modules, because you pick up the 3 books. That doesn't necessarily mean you have an adventure, especially if you're not familiar with this genre whatsoever. You really want to get the player's handbook, the DM's
Dungeon
manual,
Master.
and the monster manual, and then a module if you're trying to launch this all
Yeah.
like you're and never played an
And that's like
RPG.
$200 right there.
Easy, yeah. Like I
Yeah.
mean, like well, actually, yeah, I think it actually kind of is pretty
Yeah.
close to that these days. Because the inflation, everything else has
Right.
gone stupid expensive, and so yeah, like you're saying, like it's like this almost old school before they had cell phones, instant download, credit card attached to the cloud, whatever. That's kind of how they set up their business standpoint,
Mm-hmm.
and it was hard for them. This is back TSR kind of building this out originally. That's why like AD&D has so many ridiculous products out,
Mm-hmm.
because they had to constantly find new ways to sell the brand
Yep.
after you've already purchased the main games, the player's handbook and the like.
Well, and again,
Um,
like, there's no way to really stop somebody from just playing with your system once they know it. Like, you're
yeah,
selling people knowledge, and like knowledge once it's learned, does not have a paper value. You know what I mean? Like
right.
it doesn't like once I know what THACO is, I don't need your book anymore. I will never need your book again. So like, and now with things like the internet and stuff, it's a lot easier to get a hold of that. I'm in that market with my company. No one knows it better than me, and the lack of money we have made. The thing is, though, is I think Hasbro is a straight company. We sell board games, we sell card games, we sell toys. And then they were like, "Hey, D&D has this huge market base. If we buy this thing, we can make a lot of money off of it." You can. The problem is that you're not purchasing the game as a product. You're purchasing the consumer base. And the problem
Right.
is that you took that consumer base and you have broke the trust multiple times over and over again. So you look at the like layoffs and whatnot, it makes sense to me because they've made mistake after mistake after mistake since Hasbro has had the company. Unless I'm seeing something wrong, which like I said, I divulged to your information on the current affairs, but everything I've read has been just like the licensing, it was a huge mistake. The weird anti super racism comments they made, it's just been one mistake after another with them.
Yeah, it has been, and for those of us who really follow it the closely and love like D&D, and I know you're not the big D&D guy.
No, no.
You're the RPG, you're TTRPG, but I mean, as we've discussed multiple times, there's a cornucopia of RPGs out there. For those of us who were really into D&D, there was something that was frightening us for months now, and that is microtransactions.
Hmm.
um their forced digitalization of the game, them refusing to
Welcome.
print books anymore. They're not even getting making
Welcome to
books.
the video games. Welcome. You
Yeah,
can't
yeah,
buy copies of video games anymore. That's why GameStop's going out of business. Everything's sold digitally in the video game world. And
and that,
microtransactions, oh man, that's morning tea is microtransactions.
yeah, and I mean, like, we're just talking like, how do you make that happen when you can just own the book? Well,
Right.
you can't own the book anymore, and or at least they're eliminating any future printings of the books. No future editions will be printed, supposedly. Additionally, they're forcing everybody to go through D&D Beyond to access any of the material that you want to purchase, and read and play with, and they're trying to funnel everybody into using D&D Beyond as kind of a all-in-one template place where this is where you go to play Dungeons and
Yep.
Dragons,
Yep.
which I play Dungeons and Dragons on Discord. I also play it at my kitchen table.
Right.
That's that's one of the best parts about like D&D, sitting around with your friends, about
Yeah.
RPGs, sitting around with your friends, playing, making voices, having adventures, all of just basically make believe
Yep.
for you know, and they're trying to take that out of there and replace it with really flashy graphics, three-dimensional virtual tabletop that you
Mm-hmm.
can move tokens around on. They're trying to turn it into a video game.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about this before. Not even that, not even the layoffs or anything, but D&D has been gamerizing TTRPGs in a way that I don't particularly like. Look, I love video games, obviously. I started a whole channel and work on that channel for 5 years without making more than, well, I made $10 I made. So like, I love video games. I don't want to see, like, D&D role playing is not about stats go up, big numbers go up. Like, it is about the role playing experience, and D&D has slowly, it's one of my biggest gripes with D&D is it every day it seems to move farther away from what it was in the beginning. And look, I don't know Gary Gygax. I don't know what his original vision was. I don't know if that's what he wanted or not. But like, that's what it is. It is a great way to play pretend. That is what it is. But the problem is D&D is forgetting about the play pretend, and they're thinking more about like the numbers and the stats. Look, if you're a build guy out there, I don't have anything against you. All right, I'm just saying that like the game shouldn't be all that, because then you're just playing a miniature game. Get Warhammer
Right.
or something. Like at that point, like what are we even doing here? You know?
Yeah, yeah, and there, like we've said a million times, there's 1,000 different types of games. Warhammer is another. That's a fun game.
It is.
Um,
It's too
at least
expensive. Too expensive.
Right. That's the thing that's kind of kept me out of that particular genre. And it's a time sink. Uh, but it has existed for such a long time because it's a lot of fun.
Right.
But it's also not D&D.
Right. Right.
And so when you take the brand and you start cracking it open and trying to fit it into, you have a square brand and you're trying to fit it into a circle hole, like
Right.
that peg's not fitting.
Right.
And you're trying to shave it down so it does fit. I think it's a mistake.
Can I ask you a question about this D&D Beyond?
Yeah.
How do you get D&D Beyond? Is it a monthly subscription fee?
Let's see. There is a monthly subscription currently in its current iteration.
Okay.
And they're going to make it more intrinsic to playing the game, and then add on microtransactions. No, we don't know what that will look like. There's already kind of microtransactions on there if you want to, because like you go on D&D Beyond right now, let's say you have 5th edition already in the books, but there's a certain like subclass of wizard out there. You're like, oh, I want to play this type of wizard. You can just buy that one wizard subclass. You don't have to buy the book that
it's
wizard was written in.
microtransactions. It blows my mind that you say that Microsoft people are like in charge of D&D now. You look at Game Pass. This is literally what Game Pass is. Like Game Pass, Ubisoft now has a subscription service, and in video games you have this migration to subscription paid services. It sounds exactly like what they're doing to D&D. They're attempting. It's the same model basically. Only the difference is they're doing it with one game instead of hundreds of games.
Right. And it's their IP. It's Wizards of the Coast's big IP, other than Magic the Gathering, which again, from my not a Magic.
That's
guy,
already a microtransaction video game, though. I can go on right now, download it on my phone, and and play and pay for packs. Like that's already any collectible card game has switched to digital, and I would actually argue, as a collectible card game guy, that has benefited collectible card games in a lot of ways. Just because like when you were young and you had a Magic the Gathering deck, how hard was it to like find another person with a Magic Gathering deck, find time, find space to like play it? I can go on my phone right now. I can go on to Magic the Gathering and I can play a game, period, done, like against somebody in the world. Plus the addition of the digital space for collectible card games allowed for things that you couldn't do in person. Like Legends of Runeterra was one of my favorite card games for a long time. That game actually involves cards leveling up. You can't do that in person. Like that's pretty epic. Right. So like I would argue that digitally that was a positive experience for card games. But still, you've got the same model there. It's the same model. It's the same, like, here's the product, pay for, you don't buy it, you never own it. You don't buy it, you never own it. It's ours. You get to rent space in it. That's it.
Yeah, and that's brutal for D&D. And I think we're seeing it with these layoffs. I think we're seeing it with fan backlash.
Yeah.
And for me coming into this is a little bit newer territory. I've been watching this for the last couple of years, but it sounds like video games have kind of taken this template and mastered it.
I would not say mastered it, because they are crashing and crashing hard. I think Microsoft's Game Pass has mastered it to the best extent that it has existed. I have a subscription to Game Pass. Game Pass is one of the most valuable subscriptions to the modern day gamer there is. If you're super casual, I don't know if I would recommend it, but if you're a PC player who has a good amount of time and likes to play games, you pay $10 a month and you play. There's like a market of like 100 games plus any Microsoft game that's AAA first party that comes out, and Microsoft has been on a spending spree and bought half the industry. Any first party game that comes out, they get day one. Like day one, you can just play it right off Game Pass.
So
they've mastered
it. Really provides a lot of value for the gamer.
Yes. And however, it also takes away your it takes away. It doesn't really provide value for the gamer. It provides convenience for the gamer, and it allows you to pay a smaller amount, because video games cost $70 a pop now. So like, it allows for a smaller amount, for you to play the game. But here's the problem: it takes away your ability to ever own anything, have any control over it, or anything to that effect. Even the digital does. Like, you could spend $70. Like, I just spent $70 for the new WWE 2K24 game. That's an annualized franchise. I don't play it for the internet stuff, but every year a new one comes out, and then they shut down the servers for the old one. So basically, that game becomes useless in a year. Anthem. I have a copy of Anthem. Anthem was a live service game that EA did that failed, and I loved it, but it failed. I have a copy of it upstairs. I can't play it because they shut the servers down. There is no way to play it. It is offline. It is done.
And can you play it offline at all?
No.
Like, there's not a campaign mode or something?
No. That's what I'm saying. Like, that's where you guys are heading. That's the unfortunate part, is when you don't own anything. Those terms of service that you check and you go, yeah, sure, terms of service, without reading. Basically what those say is, you don't own this. You're never going to own this. You're spending an amount of money to be able to view this and to use this, as long as we decide you can use it and view it. And then once it's gone, it's gone. Gaming is like that now, where like, you never own anything. Even the stuff that you buy, all of it, even if you bought a physical copy, you went to GameStop, you've got a disc drive on your console or your PC if you're an insane person, but nobody on a PC has a disc drive anymore. But if you go to get a disc and bring it home and put it in, that game guaranteed has a day one patch. It will download that day one patch when it installs your game on your console, and if it can't do that, you ain't playing it. Period.
Yeah.
So like nothing in video gaming is owned by the consumer. You're basically renting time to play the game. Period.
So, as we are seeing, Microsoft executives moving into D&D is kind of pushing in that direction.
That's what it looks like.
Since you got some history with this, how much is this playing a role in all of these bankruptcies and closures and nightmares happening over in the video game world?
Honestly, in the video game world, I think it's a little bit different. Not to say that it wouldn't happen in D&D, but in the video game world, it's mismanagement. It's overspending and underperforming. What they end up doing is they have these like first of all, video games takes in more money than movies, music, and TV combined. That's how much video games takes in monetarily annually, and they're still failing. Right there, you're doing something wrong. a game that costs $70 to purchase, right?
Yeah.
That game may have taken 5 to 10 years to create. So, like, just think about how much went into that game. And basically, the other problem is the game companies don't know when to stop. They're all about coulda, not shoulda. So, if they can make it better, they make it better no matter what. And then it gets so bloated and overdone that, like, it breaks when you get it right off the bat. Most games, when you get them on day one, are broken in some way, shape, or form. You have bugs, crash bugs, whatever. One of the reasons for the day one patches, but those usually don't fix it, and you usually end up playing with a broken game for about a week. But you have that fall, and then they expect you and everybody on the planet to play this game, and when they don't get the return on their investments. Like that's right. The big problem. And it's the same with the live service. The whole industry keeps doubling down on live service games. No players want live service games anymore. Not necessarily because they don't want to play live service games, but because the companies that are making the live service games just keep breaking trust, just keep doing shitty things. Like they're just terrible knockoffs of like Destiny or PUBG or another battle royale, and then like with more microtransactions and some cool aesthetic. And the problem is when you have these long-term players who play like Fortnite and those kind of games, you have to do something amazing to take them away from that. And to do something amazing, you have to put your heart and soul into it. None of them do. Instead, what they do is they release trash, basically, like trash copies of it that took them $42 billion to make. Then when they don't make anything off of it, they put it in the trash, which again breaks even more trust with the players. You know, the games of service that are truly successful, PUBG, Destiny, Call of Duty's having its problems right now because they've broken trust, but Fortnite, you know, those kinds of things, Phantasy Star Online, even World of Warhammer to a point, they have established trust with the consumer base to the point where, like, when they release a game or a series or a set, the consumer base can go, this is at least going to be a semi-quality material thing, and I know how that they are doing their stuff, they're honest, they're open. It's all about communication, and the big companies don't have any communication, but they want to do this. They just released a game called The Suicide Squad, based off the superheroes, The Suicide Squad. Yeah. Instead of making it a superhero game, it's Destiny. It's Destiny with Harley Quinn, King Shark, Boomerang, and Deadshot. They gave them all guns. Like, King Shark, an immortal shark god who's bulletproof, runs around with a Gatling gun doing fetch quests. Like, they literally made it into Destiny and gave it gear score. That's another thing. It's like terrible. All of these high-priced companies, they just think we're going to do a Destiny and we're going to make all the money. No. And it's not even that you can't make a live service superhero game. It's just, what is the point of make a live service superhero game? Make it interesting, make it cool, make it superheroes instead of gear score go up, numbers go up, bad guys go down, do more missions. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And that was actually kind of the one back in the day before I had to step away from video games because it was becoming an issue in my life. Destiny was one of my go-tos, and I ended up kind of just giving up on it because it was I couldn't just sit down and play it. Mm-hmm. Really, like, I have to buy, you know, an extension here. I have to buy something there, and it got tedious to me having to make all of those purchases. It just wasn't my thing.
Right.
And it is for a lot of people, which is fine. You know, it can't be all things to everyone. But it sounds like they kind of had a niche that they were working. Some of them are working it okay in this live service game sort of model, but others are completely failing because of kind of getting greedy. Basically, they're trying to grab all the money they can without actually giving anything of value out.
It's super mismanagement. It's the AAA companies are run by CEOs who only see money. They don't see the art in it, and because they don't see the art, they don't sell well enough. They spend too much on it, and they don't sell well enough to make back their nut on it. You know, it's just that simple. Yeah. Like, at the end of the day, they overspend.
It feels honestly really like D&D is headed down that same direction.
Mm-hmm.
Wizards of the Coast is being managed by people that don't understand the product, don't understand their fans. We're getting lip service from talking heads that do understand the fans to a certain degree. They know how to communicate with us, but it's lip service
Yeah.
because there's no, there's no heart behind it. There's no action behind
Yeah.
what is being said. We want you guys to have, a great D&D experience, but the people who are actually making the decisions don't really know what a great D&D experience is.
Exactly.
Um,
Exactly. And that is very much the problem in gaming. And I think that you definitely have that. Even the people who understand, they're still doing a job, And like one of the games that I got really into this year is a game called Skull and Bones. Skull and Bones is one of the most controversial video game releases there is. It was literally in development hell for 10 years. Then they finally released it. It's this like games as service naval arcade pirate game, basically. And I love it. But
that sounds cool.
it is, but it costs way too much money. It's $70. It's a live service game anyway, so you're going to be paying for like battle passes and loot boxes down the road. And it's sad because you look at like you see the developers, the actual developers, boots on the ground developers working on it. They love the game. They want the game to be successful, but they're still doing a job, They have to do what the bosses say. I think it's the same thing with D&D. I think there's plenty of people at Wizards of the Coast who want to make a great D&D product, but you've got people at Hasbro, you've got now Microsoft people being hired on who don't give a shit about D&D. They don't give a shit about the D&D player. All they want to do is make money as efficiently as possible without giving you as little as possible. Like that's the CEO's goal in video gaming, and that sounds like the CEO goal at Hasbro is how little can we give them for how much money that they will give us, and that's the equation that seems to be going through their head.
Okay. So another angle on this that I've said, and I'm gonna backtrack on it a little bit now.
Sure.
But another angle I
Sorry,
said,
I get ranty on video games.
No. This leads me directly to where I want to go next, which is what's going to happen next to the D&D brand and the TTRPG industry as a whole as a result of all of this mayhem going on. But when this started happening, somebody, I can't remember who it was online, started making some comments about maybe this is actually a plan to devalue Wizards of the Coast and the D&D brand in order for them to sell it. Because there is such a thing where it's so valuable it can't be sold,
right?
And the company can't afford to continue to operate it,
right?
Because of other issues that the company is having in other divisions.
Right.
Now, I'm not 100% sure that is like the master sinister plan the whole time. I felt like it was at the first start of all of this drama because their decisions were so head-scratchingly dumb. It's like, how could you make such a bad decision unless you're trying to screw up the brand?
Right.
But I am kind of wondering if this is kind of more of a plan B now, because it looks like they're trying to move in the same direction that video games are moving in. If they could make it work, that would be a lot of money for them.
Mm-hmm.
I can see that concept. And if it doesn't work, well, then we've devalued the brand. We can always sell it.
Yeah.
And that'll be fine. That'll be that.
Sorry. Go ahead.
No. So from a game industry standpoint, from a video game standpoint, have you seen anything like that reflected in the industry?
Yeah.
That these CEOs from Microsoft would be learning from and trying to bring into the RPG industry.
Yes, 100%. Microsoft is one of the evilest companies in video games right now. I used to love them. It's a joke I make all the time on our video game podcast. If you listen to my video gaming podcast from the beginning, you literally watch the death of hope in a man slowly over the course of like 5 years. Because I start out like, I love video games and I'm old, so let's just talk about video games. And now I'm like, everything sucks. I'm like on camera with a cigarette. Like it's just, it's terrible. But yeah, Microsoft is one of the most evilest companies there is. and they have done it under the guise of, hey, we're your friends. We made Game Pass super cheap, and now you can get all these games. Phil Spencer is the head douchebag, and he always comes in his business casual leather jacket, like, hey, what's up? Let's go skateboarding together. And like he doesn't care about money and only money. At the same time, they literally in the last 4 years have bought just basically half the industry. Just bought them. They've just leveraged Microsoft money because Nintendo and Sony didn't want to put Game Pass on their stuff. So they were like, all right, we'll just buy everybody. So they just literally bought everybody to the point where they went after Activision. Activision is one of the highest ones. They got accused of having a monopoly. There was a huge court battle over it. And in the court battle, that they still won somehow because great job, government. But... all this stuff came out, like emails of like, here's the plan. We can just aggressively outspend Sony. They don't make enough money. We can just buy companies and companies and companies until the only thing they can do is come to us. And guess what? They still got Activision. Even though they promised no layoffs, they've now laid off a bunch of people at Activision. And they have made no promises to put it on Sony. But all of a sudden, Sony is getting Microsoft original games because Sony has been like, all right, well, we can't beat them anymore. So like that's the kind of stuff that you see from Microsoft. They are an evil company with all the money. Don't ever think they're anything other than that. And anybody who comes from them, that's how they play. That's how they play ball. They'll show up in their cool leather jacket on a skateboard with sunglasses, and then they'll take the money out of your pocket. Take your baby out of the crib. They're terrible.
I was actually initially kind of excited when Chris Cox came on as the CEO of Wizards of the Coast. He did a bunch of interviews. He said all the right words.
Yep.
Not paying out. I feel like a fucking idiot now.
Yeah. They're very good at saying the right words. Yeah. If I might be so bold. Personally, there are ways they could have done this that would have made them money and not broken trust. Think if D&D Beyond was free, okay? But instead of like a monthly subscription or whatever, on there you could buy products at a discounted rate if you only bought them digitally, right? So like your player's handbook and stuff, and then it would be on your D&D Beyond. But what they should have done is leveraged the IP in other areas, which they have slightly done. There have been 2 video games announced. Obviously, Baldur's Gate 3 is a huge success, and then you had the movie Honor. What's it called?
Honor Amongst Thieves.
Love that movie. It was a really good movie. And I don't even like D&D, and I love that movie. But that's what you do, and then you do that by saying to people, and this is how you really get your community to be. You go, okay, so we've made this program that you all have to get used to, and we're probably not going to print books anymore, and that sucks. But we're giving you the program for free, and you can buy our books through the program, and what we're going to do is this links us all, so now you can submit your stuff directly to the program, and then we can actually use that stuff in the IP stuff. Maybe you'll get a cut of it, and then you'll actually see your stuff in like movies and cartoons and shows like that. And then they should have just licensed the shit out of D&D and had this. You could have had a direct link between the consumers and the content creators that make your stuff so interesting to the video games and stuff like that. How cool would that have been? That would have gotten me into D&D, but instead you have charged a monthly subscription. You have monetized something that people love. You have taken away their ownership of it, and you have forced them into this place where at any point in time, they're not printing books anymore, Wiz. So let me tell you this. Yeah. In 4 years, when they decide to shut their doors, do you think D&D Beyond is going to stay open? No. They're going to shut that shit down, and version 6, 7... 5th, 8th edition, whatever, they're gone.
Yeah, 100% agree with that.
Sorry, I got ranty there.
No, that's exactly.
Sound like I was yelling at you. I wasn't yelling at Wizard, everybody. I get ranty. Neil calls it my tinfoil hat.
Okay, I'm the wizard. You're the sorcerer. Sorcerers are always volatile as shit, and they just blow up everything.
Sounds
Um,
about right. Sounds about right.
um, no, that sounds definitely like where D&D is kind of going. I'm really glad that we had this conversation about this because like you've seen this sort of play out on the video game
Mm-hmm.
already. It seems like this is where they're headed. I 100% agree with you. In fact, like I've actually was reading Slaying the Dragon this last week, which was a history of Dungeons and Dragons. TSR, the portion that I've read so far is talking about TSR and its collapse. And one
Mm.
of the big things they did was not value the other IP that was being produced by the original D&D brand, which was the novels.
Right.
Uh, D&D novels made them a shit ton of money. At one point, they were making them more money than the actual game sales themselves
Yeah.
because everybody already owned the books. And so they were just making money off modules, which modules don't sell as well.
Right. And I've
But
been on TTRPG Twitter. There's just nonstop people making books for this. All you could do is you'd be like, hey, D&D Beyond's for free, but your book, if you want it to be a chance to actually be attached to RP and actually be real, it's $2. $2 per book.
Right.
And then boom, your book could end up in a movie. That's huge. That's huge for those content creators, you know?
and look at
Value them.
One of the things that really has made D&D explode in popularity is podcasts, actual
Yeah.
play podcasts, all the way
Yeah.
to the point where, Critical Role,
Yeah.
their storyline has been turned into a cartoon animated series on
Amazon Prime. And it is successful. Very successful.
Yeah, and it's actually good. It's a lot of fun.
Exactly. You could have that kind of stuff in D&D. You could create that kind of network instead of just like monetizing it into little choppy bits, you know? They don't the greatest resource that D&D has is the players. And that's the problem is that Hasbro never sees that. They never see that like it's not the the people are not consumers with D&D. They're players. Those are your resource. That's what you monetize. I know that sounds evil, but that's what you have to monetize. That's what you have to get to, and the only way you get to that is by getting trust. You haven't gotten any trust with them, so why would they trust you? Instead, you're treating them like consumers. You're treating them like a dad who goes to the supermarket to buy grapes. Like that's what you're treating us like. It's just not that kind of market space.
Okay.
Sorry,
So
I've gotten ranty again. I apologize.
No, I'm right there with you, and this is really good feedback. Seeing, I'm not sure that there's a lot of RPG players out there that are as into video games as you are, which is one of the reasons why I think this conversation's going so well, and where we're really discovering things is because they're trying to make D&D a video game, and it's not working out for them. They are laying people off. There are new products that were supposed to be big releases that everyone's excited about are getting delayed because it's just not working. So where does this head? Where do you think? Let's get into the prediction section.
Okay.
D&D, I think, is headed towards a dark place.
Yes.
But what about the industry at large?
So
What do you think this means for RPGs everywhere?
I do want to say this. I think, and this is gonna sound overtly mean to D&D, and I don't mean it to be, because I know everybody thinks I'm a D&D hater. One of the things about the video game industry and the crash that I take solace in are the games that I really play, that I truly love, other than maybe like the WWE and that, are AA and single A games. Those are the games that I really get into, and that market is flourishing. There's tons of those coming out a day. People buy those. They make them for the right amount of money. They don't usually overspend, and they make money back on them, and they treat us right. With TTRPGs, I think TTRPGs has outgrown D&D. And this isn't saying D&D's bad. I'm not saying that, D&D fans. I'm saying it's outgrown D&D as the one and only pillar of RPGs. There are people out there who don't even refer to role-playing games as RPGs or TTRPGs role-playing games. They refer to it as playing D&D. That's how popular D&D is. I think TTRPGs as an industry has outgrown that. You look at other companies, your indie like hell, role-playing games is all indie developers. Even in the D&D space, the truly interesting stuff being done, in my opinion, is the independent people who are using the license and just posting crazy stuff. There's God, I can't remember their name. It's like Gorgon Press or something like that, who makes like hard rock versions of gods and stuff. That kind of stuff is really cool and interesting. That's the stuff, if I was into D&D, that I would get into. I think TTRPGs, tabletop role-playing games as a whole, has outgrown D&D as its, parent, basically. And I think that D&D may fail, but TTRPGs itself is really strong, because I don't, again, my finger is not on the pulse, but you have, even at the worst that I've complained about drive-through games, I think that they do a great service. Like, you can get tons of independent people stuff there. You've got Itch, that you can get tons of independent stuff that are radical and free-thinking, crazy systems, off-the-wall system. Not all of them work. Not all of them don't work. Like, it's all in between. And I think that that's where TTRPG flourishes. That's where it survives. I don't think it necessarily needs D&D to lead it anywhere anymore. And I think that's also one of the big mistakes that Hasbro has made, is they have thought, hey, people have to buy us. We're RPGs. That's what we are. They don't. They don't have to buy you anymore. They can go other places. Even for games like that, there's Pathfinder and other such items that are large, D20, crunchy, heavy systems to play with. There are places to go other than D&D, and I think that the consumer base at large is smart enough at this point, even the newer people, to go, hey, we don't want to play that anymore. We can find something else and do it our way. Yeah. And I think that's the thing, is I think TTRPGs as a whole, as an industry, at this particular moment, to me, it's more like D&D is doing what the video games are doing. And it sounds to me it's because some of the video game people went over there, Yeah. But I don't see anybody else in TTRPGs doing that. I don't see White Wolf doing that. I don't see any of the other big guys doing it. So, I think that TTRPGs as a whole is fine, even if D&D falls.
And there has been a little bit of concern about D&D falling and taking the RPG community with it. And I can see some of the arguments, because, as we have said, D&D has been the introduction to RPGs at large for so many people.
Right.
However, I do think, that perspective is looking a little too far into the past.
Yeah.
When TSR fell, it did put a notch in RPGs as a whole.
But there was 4 of them back then.
Yeah. And they all kind of felt it because D&D was the only household name.
Yep.
Today, though, this isn't the 90s, This is 2024. Anybody can get online and have a podcast like you and I are doing right now and talk about our favorite freaking games, and things go viral, moments go insane. All you need is another group of voice actors out there that are really badass and really fun to make a really fun podcast.
Yeah. And as far as the game, all you got to do is go online with any Word document, set a price, put it on Itch,
Yeah, exactly. And play the guerrilla marketing and generate some noise about it, and then you start getting bigger and bigger, and that's hopefully you make it. Some will, some won't, but I think tentatively at this moment, I think we're maybe a little too soon to see where the industry as a whole is going to go. I'm hoping it goes in the right direction. I'm faithful that it's going to go in the right direction. I believe it is.
I don't think it's going anywhere yet. I don't think D&D generates that much, and I think that the people out there who create for D&D will have just an easier time creating for somebody else.
100%. It's not easier.
Now's a good time to find a new game, and you can find a new game on itch.io by searching in the search bar single mod.
That's a good segue.
I'll be the new D&D. Let's do it.
Yeah,
let's do it.
Yeah. Actually, let's go ahead and I think
we're good.
We've come to a conclusion. So
yeah.
Tell us. You want to plug Single Mod? Tell us a little bit about what it is.
Yeah, Single Mod is an RPG I made. It's rules light, but still has a good amount of crunch for you. Also, when you purchase it, it's only $6 on itch.io. When you do purchase it, I promise that any rules other than complete scenario rules. Any rules to the base game that I change, you'll get for free. I've already done a 1.5, updated some rules, added a couple into the base book, and people got to just re-download them. So just keep that in mind. We also have a book coming out here in the next couple of months, I hope. Me and Wiz are working on the final touches of it. Ordo Scriptorium, which will be our first official scenario for single mod. Or, I don't know, scenario. Setting? Yeah, because single mod is just base. Like, here are the rules to play RPGs, period. You come up with the setting. Whereas Ordo is going to be a setting, you know, all the way around, which we will also release with a podcast playing Ordo, which we are recording right now.
It's going to be a lot of fun. We've been working back and forth quite a bit on that. We're in the home stretch of that one. Loving that game. It's a horror game, sort of a gothic horror game specifically. And yeah, I think that one's going to be a lot of fun to play. For the Wizard's Respite, all of these can be found. All of these episodes can be found on the Wizard's Respite. All of our RPG games, actual plays can be found on the Wizard's Respite. This shirt and others like them can also be found on the Wizard's Respite. And it's all TTRPG over there.
Yes.
So yeah, I think come join us. Come take a look at what we got going on, and I guess until next time, everybody, keep rolling them dice.